I have taken a look at the comment section, I have looked at the Facebook posts, I have read the forum posts, and there is a very popular narrative around the Jets fan base that says if the Jets trade for Deshaun Watson, they cannot build a team around him, and the Jets would become the East Coast version of the Houston Texans. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true. Welcome to Jets Talk. My name's Ryan. I'll be your pilot today. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you've been here before, welcome back. I love having you here. All right, let's get a few things straight right off the bat. So I have had a bunch of people come up and tell me that there is no way the Jets could trade for Deshaun Watson and that they would not be able to build a team around him no matter what because they'd be giving up all their assets that they have that they got from the Jamal Adams trade. And that's just not true. The Jets literally have a ton of assets across the board. And let me preface all of this by saying this is not my official mock-off season. I'm going to be having a few different mock-off seasons that I'm going to be doing. Getting Deshaun Watson, this one, probably the most volatile and could potentially be obsolete if he gets traded tomorrow. 2 will be keeping Sam. 3 will be trading Sam, drafting quarterback, something along those routes. But I have a few that are going to come out here, so I don't think this is the final product. I do think this is the least likely chance to have happen because Joe Douglas does not strike me as someone that wants to trade a ton of high draft picks for a player when he can just draft one. Nor do I think he is a guy that could sign a ton of high-priced free agents. But in this scenario, it's just sort of a thought experiment, but in this scenario, I'm going to show you how the Jets could build a team around Deshaun Watson and really not be that crazy far-fetched. It's not that bad. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. And you know what? If you have any issues with it, just leave a comment down below. I'm not going to take any offense to it. But all right, so I used Tankathon and Pro Football Focus, their big boards to use for the draft rankings, as a way to just sort of keep things relatively consistent. There's going to be so many different rankings across the board. Like guys that I have going in the 3rd round, who knows, could go in the 1st round, could go in the 6th round. There's so much volatility this year with not much college football being played and guys opting out. This whole thing's going to be a cluster. So let's get into it. First, what are our primary needs? I have us down for quarterback, wide receiver, edge rusher, cornerback, interior offensive line. So that could be center or guard, mainly guard for this experiment, running back, and kicker. Secondary needs would be tight end, linebacker, safety, right tackle. Those are positions that I would like to address, but may not be as critical because we do have some starters in these roles right now. How much money do we have to work with? We got to look at our cap space to know what we have to work with. Well, the Jets are sitting at about 2nd or 3rd place depending on where you look. Spot Track has us at $65 million. Over the Cap has us at $63 million. So I'm going to use the $63 million figure just because it's lower, gives me a little bit more, less room to work with, I guess. So let's do this. Let's get this out of the way. Let's say we trade for Deshaun Watson. The thought process here is that, Daniel Jeremiah had the idea of a 1st-round pick each of the next 3 years. Let's make this a worst-case scenario. Let's say we have to lose both firsts this year, and then you can figure out and argue on what the other, compensation is. But let's say we have to lose both firsts this year. Can we build a team around Deshaun Watson? Well, I've heard people say you can't build them because you don't have the draft picks. Well, we still have 8 draft picks, or 7 draft picks, plus whatever pick we get for Sam. Then you also have your cap space. We have a ton of cap space. I just brought that up. And people are going to say, oh, he's a $40 million contract. But he's not. That's not the case. He's not a $40 million contract. For the Texans, yes, $40 million contract. When you trade for a player, though, you lose the signing bonus off that contract. So the Jets really are not paying that much. Or any team that trades for him would really not be paying all that much. You're talking $10 million, $35 million, $37 million, and then the last 2 years of his contract at $32 and $32 million. So really not that bad when you consider that Dak, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen are probably all going to make close to, if not north of $40 million this offseason. And then in each offseason after that, you're going to see quarterbacks getting paid more and more and more. And by the time you get to $32 million in year 5, there's going to be guys making $50 million a year. So really not a bad contract. Really, I would say a good contract if you were the New York Jets, because we have plenty of cap space right now to eat all these things. Because we don't have any players. We haven't drafted anyone that's worth signing. All right. So now that we got that out of the way, let's say with Sam Darnold, what are we expecting from Sam Darnold? What are we getting from him in a trade? Well, in this experiment, I said we're going to get a 2nd-round pick. I said the 49ers, but I have other people that are upset with me for picking that. But I'm just going to say the 49ers. as an option. Gives us the 12th pick in the second round. I would say we are safe assuming we could get a second round pick. There's people thinking that the Jets could get a second plus a late round pick. I'm just going to say a second here for the sake of argument. So by trading Sam, the Jets are going to save about $4.7 million or so. We have to go through our cut list and everything that we would do there. So I have 3 simple cuts. I'm going to cut Henry Anderson, Alex Lewis, and Josh Doxson. You're going to save 8.2, 5.4, and $1 million across the board. You could cut Fant or Crowder. I don't want to go that route, though, because I think we do need weapons, and Crowder's been our most stable weapon on the offensive side of the ball. And then George Fant, while he may not be the best right tackle, I think opening up a hole for the sake of opening a hole when you have the second or third most cap space in the league, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we're going to keep those 2, but we're going to get rid of these 3. Players that we're going to let walk, we're going to let Perriman, Jenkins, Gore, McDougal, and Flacco all walk in free agency. Now, re-signing wise, first and foremost, the guy that Joe Douglas brought up in his press conference as being a really critical piece, and that's Marcus May, our starting safety, the only safety we have left of our safety duo that we drafted back in 2017. And Marcus May really stepped up to the plate. He has been a leader. He has called out, I don't want to say calling out coaches is a good thing, but he called out Greg Williams on the whole blown play against the Raiders and the last-minute touchdown and all that. He's a team leader, been a good player. We should want him back. He's a homegrown player. So I gave him 4 years, $44 million. That's $11 million a year. According to Over the Cap, the franchise tag for a safety is $11 million. So if you think he's going to get more, maybe they franchise tag him for a year. But I think he'll want to re-sign with a new defensive head coach, and he'll want to stay here long term. So we'll say $11 million a year for Marcus May. Brian Poole will be my second re-signing. That is a 3-year, $18 million deal, $6 million a year, sorry. That is going to be a $1 million bump in pay that he's getting each year, and then also 3 years added on. He had a 1-year, $5 million deal this year. Neville Hewitt, I think, has done a really solid job in filling in for starters, being a good depth piece. I gave him a 1-year, $2 million deal. It's the same contract that Peanut, a 1-star, got with us last year, so I think we bring back one of our own here. Pat Elflein, the guard that we got from the Vikings, we claimed him on waivers this past year, and I think that was sort of a nod to Joe Douglas wanting to bring him in the offseason anyway. So 1 year, $2 million, similar to Alex Lewis, if you want to kind of compare it that way. But we have a depth piece with Elflein there. I think he played relatively well next to Becton. Next up, we start to roll into free agency, and there's going to be a lot of names that could potentially be hitting the market. There's going to be some that are going to be franchise tagged, but with the salary cap dropping, and with a lot of teams being over the salary cap and having to sign their draft classes, there's going to be very, very few teams that are going to be overly active in free agency, which gives the Jets the upper hand in this situation. Now, the first guy I have up on my list is Joe Thuney. I've had him on my mock draft the last 2 years. I've really wanted him. I think Joe Douglas really wants him. He's committed 3 penalties over the course of the last 2 seasons. He has started every game and can play every position across the offensive line. Now, I have him in here for 4 years, $60 million. Now, that is literally the highest paid guard that you can get. If we decide to go any other route, you could talk, Sheriff, maybe getting 15 as well. But the Jets could go after Kevin Zeitler, the guard from the Giants, who I think is going to get cut. He's 31 years old, probably not going to get a whole ton of money, may not want to up his family and move out of the New York area, so maybe he decides to go to the Jets. That could be a way cheaper option for the New York Jets than Thuney here. But for this argument, I'm saying let's get the highest priced guys just to show we can still build a team around them. So you could literally sign any other guard, and you would be getting a cheaper option than Joe Thuney. Next up, I have Allen Robinson. This is the same thought process here. Allen Robinson is probably going to be the highest paid wide receiver this offseason. I have him getting a 5-year, $20 million per year deal. It's the same deal that Amari Cooper got just 2 years ago. And again, he's going to be the highest paid wide receiver. So you can literally sign any other wide receiver that you think is going to be a number one, whether it be Corey Davis, Galladay, Godwin, Juju Smith-Schuster. I don't really want to go that route. Will Fuller, Curtis Samuel. There is just a bunch of guys that are hitting free agency this year, and Allen Robinson is just one little piece to this. So if you sign anyone else, you're saving more money than what you'd be spending on Allen Robinson. And again, these 2 guys, probably unrealistic for the Jets to get 2 really high-priced free agents, and probably unrealistic to think that the Joe Douglas would be spending this much on guys. That's not the point of this exercise. Next up, I have Richard Sherman. He is coming over to join Robert Saleh. 1 year, $7 million. That's just what Over the Cap sort of valued him at, or Spot Track, I think, valued him at. He is a very big vocal voice in the locker room. A lot of NFL players listen to him. He's a Stanford graduate. He's a smart guy. And while Jet fans may not like him for the whole Revis beef a few years ago, I think a guy that holds himself, or not holds himself, but players hold in such high self-esteem and so much, they take a lot of stock in what he says, bringing him in to at least facilitate the new culture and to sort of provide a little bit of learning on the defensive side for the new schemes that are going to get put in. I think this makes a lot of sense, and it probably, I would love Sherman as a coach. I don't necessarily want him as a starting cornerback, but he actually played really well towards the end of last year, so I'm not totally against it either. And for 1 year, figure it out. The last free agent that I have is bringing in, nothing real flashy, but this is Ronald Blair, the D-end from the 49ers. He had an ACL injury, I believe, missed all of this season. He tore it at the end of the 2019 season. So I have him getting a 1 year, $2 million deal here. Again, it's someone that I think Saleh likes. I've heard rumors that he does really like him. Bring him in, hopefully get an edge rusher, and then in the process just have another guy that knows the defense and can help facilitate the learning at all the different levels of that defense. So after all these moves, the Jets still have $10.8 million in salary cap space left. So worst case scenario, you're talking you still have money left to sign your draft class. And if they're getting rid of the 2 first round picks, the number 2 pick and the number 23 pick, that salary cap space is going to stretch a lot further, even more, because the first round picks take up the most of that salary cap space, obviously. So if you're using it on second, third, fourth round picks, it's not going to cost you nearly as much. So Jets still have plenty of cap space. So we've addressed that. Now we move on to the draft. With the first pick in the second round, I have the Jets going Asante Samuel Jr. Now he is more of a man corner. Saleh plays more of a zone defense, I think, and I know that I've talked to a few 49ers fans that feel like it's not necessarily exclusively a zone system. Guys that are watching this, please let me know in the comments down below what you think on this. I've followed Asante Samuel Jr. for the last few, I would say months. I won't say years or anything like that, but I really like him. I love the family lineage. I think that when you have a NFL dad and he becomes, you have a kid and he's playing to the caliber he's playing, he could very well sneak into the first round. Jets get him here, line him up next to Bryce Hall, and then you have your 2 corners. My next pick is going to be Trey Smith, the guard out of Tennessee. Again, this one was more so a, looking at position. Jets are going to need some interior help. I don't think this necessarily means he starts right away. I think we have Van Roten. I think we have Clark from last year, and I think we could possibly just let them compete. You could swap him out just as easily with Creed Humphrey if you want to go that route, because Creed is at least a guard / a center, and the Jets could, in theory, need that if McGovern doesn't pan out. So you can go either way here, but I chose Trey Smith here. My first pick in the third round is going to be Patrick Jones II, the pass rusher from Pitt. He is really good. I have really enjoyed watching his highlights. I definitely recommend checking that out. Jets finally get an edge rusher to hopefully generate some pressure. We haven't had an edge rusher since 2006 with John Abraham. I mean, Calvin Pace was sort of, I don't know. Calvin Pace was good. Would like someone on the John Abraham level. My 3B pick, so the second pick in the third round. This is Kenny Gainwell. I've been really, really high on Kenny Gainwell for a while. He is a perfect Shanahan back. I think he's going to run a sub 4.4 40-yard dash whenever they time that. I don't think they're doing the combine this year, so it'll be, I guess at a pro day or something like that. Can catch out of the backfield. He actually opted out this past season because 4 of his family members died of COVID. So, fresh legs, I guess. I mean, maybe you think he's going to lose a step. Maybe if you think Bell lost a step by taking a year off, I could understand that. In which case, you could probably insert any number of backs. The third round's kind of a good sweet spot. I would say 3rd to 5th round is where you can get a lot of really good value on running backs here. Next man up on my list in the 4th round, this is going to be Cameron McGrone, the linebacker from Michigan. Now, I don't love the idea of going linebacker so early, but with Mosley missing the last 2 years, we don't really know what he's going to be when he comes back. I have us bringing back Neville Hewitt, but that's only on a 1-year deal. So at the very least, I think the Jets are going to need to hedge their bets, whether it be in free agency or in the draft. And linebacker tends to transition relatively well to the NFL. So I would make this move, think of it as a little bit preemptive in case Mosley just like bottoms out and can't play anymore. Then at least you have a starter, and you just have to replace that next year with either a free agent or a draft pick. The next guy up on my list is a popular name for Jet fans because you guys have loved the massive size of this guy. And that is Daniel Faalele, the right tackle from Minnesota. He is 6'9", 400 pounds. Oh my God. Would we have the two biggest tackles with Becton standing at 6'7" and him standing at 6'9" on either side? Would be incredible. Now, he's only played football for 2 years. This would have been his third season. He opted out due to COVID. So I could definitely see him going back to school. I think he's going to be really raw, but he's a really nice upside project, especially when you have Fant on right tackle. Anyway, he doesn't have to start right away. Maybe next year he winds up competing with Udoga, and then you wind up, rolling with one of those guys at that point. At 5B, I have Shea Smith, the wide receiver from South Carolina. Jamison Crowder's going into the final year of his contract, and the Jets are going to need to find some type of replacement. I like Berrios. I don't know if I want him to be the lock full-time starter. I think adding someone late in the draft who could maybe give some assistance as a gunner or as a special teams kind of guy, while also providing some depth at the wide receiver position. The guy can play in the slot. The guy can play on the outside. He's pretty exciting. I actually only just started watching him relatively recently, so pretty interesting. And then we're going to round out our draft with, I'm going to get shit for it. I don't care. It's the Joe Douglas took a punter in the last rounds of last year's draft. I'm going to say the Jets need a kicker. We're just going to draft a kicker. You can literally insert any name. I took Riley Patterson here just because I Googled top kicker, and he was one of the names that popped up. Jets need a kicker. So let's recap exactly what just happened and why I took those picks and where our holes are right now. So our primary needs were quarterback, wide receiver, edge rusher, cornerback, interior offensive line, running back, and kicker. All 7 of those have been answered. Tight end, we're going to roll with Herndon. I like seeing him in a different offensive system. I think he has the highest likelihood of not busting. It has the highest likelihood of breaking out post Gase. The same way that Tannehill did and all the guys that left Adam Gase in Miami. So I would like to kick that can down the line, maybe address tight end next season. Safety I didn't address just because I think Sherman is a type of player that could actually slide over to safety. And then you have May and you drafted Ashton Davis. So I think that's going to be an issue. We might have to take one in a year to be a backup, but I don't think it's a primary need at all. Linebacker, I did have us take, and right tackle, I did have us take. So we hit a pretty good amount of our needs in just one offseason. And if you're wondering what that does for the Jets, well, with all these moves, you're allowed to have 53 players on your roster, the top 51 count against the salary cap. As of this draft, the Jets would have 70 players under contract. So we have plenty of space. So we have the $10 million or whatever was left over at the end of the draft, plus having $70 people under contract. Then on top of that, what does that leave the Jets in for next year? Because obviously you're giving out some huge contracts. What is this going to be? Well, 2022, the Jets roll in with $60 million in cap space. So even in the event, let's say you gave up the other 2 first-round picks next year. You're not giving up 4 first-round picks. Joe Douglas is not giving up 4 first-round picks. But even if you had to do that, the Jets still have $60 million in cap space and literally all the other picks outside of the first round. So for all those people that say that Joe Douglas cannot build a team around Deshaun Watson because the Jets will not have any assets, just show them this video. It's clearly false. The Jets can definitely build a team around Deshaun Watson. And with this roster, I would say could compete with a wild card. I don't think it's beating Buffalo right now, and I think Miami's still tough. But I would say competing for a wild card after getting the number 2 overall pick and was projected the number 1 overall pick, I would say that's a win. Not to mention Watson's 25 years old, so you got 10 more years of the guy. Well, whatever, guys. Let me know what you thought about it. Give me hell in the comments. And as always, go Jets.